Good morning, everybody. And can I just say thank you, Pauli, for that inspiring talk. I find it very difficult to move from that into what I'm going to say now. But that's life, we need to move on. So thank you for the opportunity and the invitation to participate in your discussions this morning. As Rob said, I have been working as a prison chaplain now for many, many years. And this morning I just want to share something of my experience and indeed my learnings from this work. And I want to share the experience with a view to perhaps initiating a conversation around issues of concern that have emerged for me over the years. My experience also involves working with ex-prisoners, and I think this aspect of my work and this part of my experience has shown a whole new light on the whole issue of imprisonment and the effects of imprisonment on people, and it's out of this experience that I want to speak. Obviously, I do this in the context and against the backdrop of my role as a prison chaplain and the vision out of which I operate. A vision that calls me first and foremost to be a person of faith, a vision that calls me to take a prophetic stance and a prophetic role in my stance for justice, a vision that calls me to be a voice for those deprived of their freedom, and finally, a vision that calls me to promote the principles and practices of restorative justice as an alternative to the current imprisonment system that we have. So today, out of that experience, I want just to talk about two issues. Number one is the harmful effects of imprisonment, and secondly, to look at the possibilities of restorative justice. I'm going to begin by just looking briefly at the harmful effects of imprisonment, and I think people perhaps don't realise just how damaging the effects of imprisonment are on people, not just on those incarcerated, but indeed on their families and on the wider society, and especially on the children of those who are imprisoned. And when we look at that, we see that this damage is intergenerational. Because if you look at the prison population, you will notice that many of the people who are incarcerated today are the children of the fathers and uncles and brothers and sisters who were incarcerated for many, many years before them. And I think this challenges us as a society to realise that we have an obligation to explore new and creative ways of dealing with crime, and indeed more productive and successful ways of addressing the issue. We need to create a public space where this can be debated and discussed. Some years back, Professor Ian O'Donnell stated that the most worrying aspect of our penal system was the absence of a sustained and informed debate, and added that this suggested a deep reservoir of public apathy. And I have to say I agree wholeheartedly with him. We need only look at the high rate of recidivism in our Irish prisons to realise that imprisonment does not reduce crime. It is not a preventative measure, and even though great efforts are made within the prison system to rehabilitate people at huge expense, I believe that this rehabilitation can only take place within our communities and within our families. Obviously, we do need small prisons. We need them for a small number of people who are endangerment to themselves and indeed to the wider community. But we continue to lock up the same people for the same offences, very often for petty offences, over and over again, without ever crying halt or saying, take time to look at what is really happening. When you walk the road of incarceration with people, sometimes for many, many years, and you witness at first hand the pain, the isolation, the ups and downs, the efforts, the failures, and the continuing striving to maintain family relationships and deal with the hazards of daily life in prison. And then you walk through the gate with that same person, and you witness the efforts required to reintegrate and to become part of a very often hostile society. It's then that you begin to realise the reality of what's happening and you begin to pose questions. If someone were admitted to hospital over and over again with the same symptoms for the same reasons and nothing was changing, surely someone would begin to question. But the policy and the culture of the continuous incarceration of the same people, especially the poor, the addicts, the homeless, the marginalised, the mentally ill, the continuous incarceration of these people over and over again is seldom questioned except to lay the blame at the feet of the repeat offender and the belief that all is well when we lock these people out of sight and out of mind. But all is not well in the current criminal justice system, and I believe it is failing to adequately address the needs of victims, of offenders and of society. And it is in this context that I would like just to explore very briefly the whole area of restorative justice. Under a philosophy of restorative justice, crime is no longer seen as an attack on the state, but is rather an offence by one person against another. It is based on the recognition of the humanity of both the offender and the victim, and the aim of the process is to heal the wounds of every person affected by offences, including the victim and the offender. In a restorative justice process, options are explored that focus on repairing the damage and on rebuilding relationships between the victim, the offender, and the wider community. In the current system, the emphasis on retribution, punishment, and alienation. The call to explore the option of restorative justice as a model that responds to the call of the gospel, and it's one that we need to have the courage to explore and to call for a national exploration of the whole model of restorative justice. It's something I've been talking about for years, and there are times I feel like John the Baptist, a voice in the wilderness. Nobody listens, things just go on, the same old things. If you bring your mind back to your primary school days, for me maybe it's many, many years ago, for many of you it's not so long back, but I don't know if you learned about the Brehon Laws at the time. Well, the underlying principle of the Brehon Laws, the oldest known European laws, which date back to Ireland's golden age of the 5th and 6th century, the philosophy was carte dom, carte dit, right for you, right for me. And this was central to the judgments made by the Brehon or the judges, who believed that the concept of doing unto others what you would have them do unto you was the greatest check against unfair laws. The Brehon Laws are regarded as the fairest system of ancient laws and mirror many of the values and ideals embraced in the model of restorative justice. I believe that when we come to understand that prisons are primarily places of punishment rather than personal reform, and hopefully in the process of our gospel reflections, we will come to reclaim something of our Christian heritage and reclaim something of our legal heritage as enshrined in the Brehon Laws. It is then that our apathy will be challenged, and we will create a space to explore new holistic and restorative options as a real alternative to imprisonment. Thank you.